Hey friends, tonight we begin with the remarkable and too often forgotten journeys of medieval brides, girls who left their homelands wearing velvet instead of armor, carrying treaties instead of swords. They crossed mountains, seas, and language barriers to seal the fates of kingdoms. And that's when things got really interesting. Before we unfasten the saddlebags of history, take a sleepy moment to like the video and subscribe, only if you truly enjoy drifting through dusty archives with me. Tap the comments and tell me where you're listening from and what time glows on your clock. It's always comforting to know whose candle flickers with mine across the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe crack a window so the night breeze can hum like distant chapel bells. Let's ease into this quiet road together. Close your eyes and follow the creak of a second saddle. Summer 1137. High sun over Bordeaux. 15-year-old Eleanor, inheritor of Aquitaine's vineyards, Troubadours and gold steps onto a wooden dais beside Louis Capet, the awkward king who never planned to be king at all. He wanted to be a monk. She, something closer to a comet. The priest lifts their clasped hands, the crowd cheers, and 1,000 gossiping birds take flight over the roofs. An empire is born, they say. Eleanor just feels a draft. France gains half its wealth by that single vow. She gains a husband enamored of relics and long, silent prayers. Their first night together, Louis kneels for Compline so long the candles burn out. Eleanor kicks off her jeweled slippers, drapes herself across fox fur pillows, and whispers into the dark, "Is this marriage or penance?" Days bloom into years. She hosts poets in Poitiers. He fasts in Paris. She asks for a falconry field. He funds a Cistercian abbey, yet protocol keeps them stitched side by side. So when Pope Eugenius calls the Second Crusade in 1146, Louis vows to lead the armies of Christ, and Eleanor, duchess, vassal, and still very married, vows to ride with him. The chroniclers will praise her piety, the camp followers will praise her courage, but beneath the hymn-soft rhetoric, something in her chest flares at the thought of sand, sea, and escape. Picture the departure. Sails like ivory moons, harbour bells clanging, Eleanor's Aquitanian knights swaggering down planks in bright cloaks. Louis's clerics clutch sermons against the sea wind. Somewhere on deck, a crate of Orleans candles, topples, wax blobs, skittering across board San Omen, no one bothers to read. They dock in Byzantium to fanfare. They march through Anatolia to disaster. Winter hits like a mailed fist. Supplies vanish into the hills. At Antioch, Eleanor's flamboyant uncle Raymond greets her with banquets fragrant with cinnamon and gossip. Louis, jealous and devout, sees moral hazard in every spice bowl. The army splinters. The crusade dies thirsty. Dust lets everything show cracks in iron, cracks in marriage. Eleanor refuses to follow Louis deeper into Syria. She demands an annulment on grounds of consanguinity. Too closely related, she says, as though the blood bothered her only now. Louis drags her halfway across the world before the quarrel cools. By the time they limp back to Paris, the holy cause is a punchline. Their bedroom, an icebox. 7 more years tick by. 2 daughters are born blessings, but no son for the restless French throne. Courtiers murmur that God withholds an heir because the royal couple is mismatched. Louis visits confession like it's a second job. Eleanor commissions tapestries of hunting scenes where hounds break free of leashes. Finally, in March 1152, they gather in a grey stone hall at Beaugency. A papal legate reads the polite fiction aloud. Yes, indeed, they are too related. Never mind, it took 15 years and 2 children to notice. Quills scratch, parchment curls, seals thump. Their marriage folds like a discarded map. Eleanor rides south the same afternoon with only a handful of guards swift as rumour, determined as lightning. 2 would-be kidnappers try to seize her en route. Her lands are that valuable. She outrides both. 12 weeks later, May 18, she meets 19-year-old Henry Plantagenet in Poitiers' echoing hall. The chemistry is volcanic and mutually beneficial. She sees ambition and appetite in his grin. He sees half of France in her dowry. 8 weeks after their first handshake, they marry by lamplight before even the gossip can unpack its satchels. Pause here, listener, and feel the speed of fate, from the ice of Beaugency to the fire of Poitiers in less than a season. History rarely turns so quickly or so cleanly, but Eleanor has always travelled light-only wit, nerve, and whole provinces in her baggage. In 1154, Henry becomes King of England, and Eleanor, twice crowned and twice wise, sits beside him at Winchester, the smell of Crusade dust still clinging to her cloak. She is 30, unbowed and busy. Within 10 years she births 5 sons and 3 daughters, bankrolls, troubadours, and redesigns royal patronage, so that poets call her court a fountain of verse. The continent holds its breath again, wondering if anyone can keep up with her. Louis, meanwhile, remarries first Constance of Castile, then Adele of Champagne. At last he fathers a son, the future Philip Augustus, but loses Aquitaine forever. French chroniclers blame Eleanor's stubbornness. English chroniclers applaud her savvy. Eleanor herself, if you could catch her between council meetings and nursery visits, might just smile and say nothing, because silence can be sharper than statecraft. The moral they taught at convent schools was plain: obedient brides preserve kingdoms. Eleanor rewrote that in scarlet ink. Intelligent brides rearranged them. The crusade that ruined one marriage forged another empire. The annulment meant to humble a duchess crowned a dynasty, and somewhere in the noise of armoured politics, she found a sliver of the freedom promised by Troubadour song's throne, built high enough to see over every monastery wall. So rest easy, traveller. The dust has settled, the keys to Paris have changed hands, and the girl who rode to a signature has reigned the pen herself. Outside your window a night bird calls once, twice in Gascon maybe, in Norman French, in the proud drawl of an Aquitanian queen who would not stay quiet. Let the echo drift you toward dreams, knowing the first treaty was just a prologue, and the finest verses are still to come. So let's turn the page, friend, and follow Eleanor across the Channel salt wind in her hair, crusade dust still clinging to her boots into the next chapter of her storm-bright life. Henry Plantagenet is only 19 when he scoops up the greatest duchess in Christendom. In the records they call it a shrewd political move. In the taverns they call it the fastest remarriage anyone has ever seen. In Aquitaine they just call it Tuesday. Eleanor's land has always moved at the speed of desire. Henry's shoulders are broad, his temper volcanic, his ambition bright as a new forged sword. He does not pray as long as Louis did. He does not pray much at all. He laughs with his mouth wide open, hunts until his clothes bleed bramble, and talks strategy in 3 languages before breakfast. Eleanor likes the noise of him. She is 30 and tired of monks. Together they feel like flint and tinder. Within 2 years they are King and Queen of England, and Westminster hums with accents: Angevin French, Norman drawl, Aquitanian sigh. Courtiers whisper that the Queen's dowry is half of France, and the King's appetite is the rest. They build an empire that stretches from the Scottish border to the Pyrenees, a patchwork stitched together with oaths, iron, and Eleanor's land. Then come the childrenite in all. 5 sons who wrestle in corridors and practice archery at the tapestries. 3 daughters who inherit their mother's fox-bright eyes. Henry roars with pride. Eleanor smiles like a general counting troops. For a moment the court believes in the myth of the happy royal household. But flint and tinder make sparks, and sparks in a timber palace can burn for decades. A court of sunlight and shadows, Eleanor brings troubadours north, turns Winchester into a garden of verse, teaches English nobles to appreciate the subtlety of Occitan rhyme. Henry brings exchequer reforms, pipe rolls, and long circuits of royal justice that keep him galloping from castle to castle until his boots dissolve. They admire each other's strengths and trespass on them. When Eleanor counsels leniency, Henry tightens the tax screws. When Henry drafts laws, Eleanor drafts alliances. The kingdom grows larger than either of them can easily hold. People begin to take sides. Some see Eleanor as the cultured heart of the realm. Others call her scheming, a serpent in silk. Some see Henry as the embodiment of order. Others whisper tyrant. History rarely leaves room for nuance inside its margins. Still, for 15 years they rule in noisy tandem, raising heirs, hosting Christmas courts that spill across entire cities, laughing louder than the rumours. Then comes Rosamond. A rose twined with iron. Rosamond Clifford, the fair Rosamond, appears in Henry's orbit like a moon-pale shy, the opposite of Eleanor, in every palm, reader's script. Chroniclers will argue forever about how public the affair becomes. Some say Henry builds her a labyrinth at Woodstock so only he can find her bed. Others insist that story is pure poetry. But the corridors of power breathe gossip the way lungs breathe air. Everyone knows. Eventually, Eleanor knows too. And something inside the Queen, forged in Crusade heat and Parisian frost, turns colder than winter solstice stone. She leaves the English court and rides south to Aquitaine with her sons in tow. Officially, she is taming rebellious vassals. Unofficially, she is staking out her independence. The boys young Henry, Richard, Geoffrey grow restless under their father's long shadow. Henry the King keeps promising power later. Eleanor whispers, "Why not now?" The Great Revolt of 1173. Picture 3, Prince Aquitaine, 1615, spurred on by their mother's keen words and by every baron hungry for change. They light rebellions from Normandy to Poitiers like campfires in dry grass. Young Henry claims the English crown that was promised. Richard wants Aquitaine outright. Geoffrey cites Brittany. Behind them rides Eleanor, hood up, eyes bright, orchestrating alliances like a conductor. Henry II moves with the fury of a storm god. He crushes the uprisings one by one, castles confiscated, allies bought off, sieges breaking before winter. At the finish line, he looks for the Queen who lit the fuse. She galloped towards safety, but was intercepted near the Loire, disguised in men's armour, if we believe the chroniclers. And why not? She was always fond of good fabric theatre. Captured, she is brought to Winchester under guard. No chains in public, she's still the Queen, but behind stone she is a state prisoner, locked in various castles across England for the next 16 years. 16 Christmases without her troubadours. 16 springs where Aquitaine blooms without its duchess. Henry allows her decent chambers, books, her own clerk's comforts that feel like padded walls. Outside, the world refuses to settle. Rosamond dies, poisoned by Eleanor's hand. Legends hiss, though the dates make that impossible. Young Henry dies of fever during a fresh rebellion. Geoffrey is trampled in a Paris tournament. Only Richard the Lionheart remains Leon-hearted because his mother sharpened his claws. Silence that roars imagine. Eleanor pacing a tower room that overlooks nothing but grey sky. She composes letters in Latin, in French, in Occitan verse. She sews, reads saints' lives, perhaps smiles at the irony. The woman once blamed for being too loud learns to weaponize quiet. Henry visits occasionally. They dine, discuss politics, never mention love. Sometimes he brings their youngest, John, to demonstrate fatherly success. Eleanor looks into the boy's sly eyes and thinks, not iron, but quicksilver dangerous in another way. Years pass. Henry wages war against France, against his surviving sons, sometimes against his own aging bones. He survives everything except betrayal by blood. Richard allies with King Philip of France, marches south. Henry retreats, ill and beaten, to Chinon, where messengers list the rebels' names. On the parchment he finds John and breaks. The king who conquered England's barons dies murmuring curses. Release and return July 1189. Castle doors swing open, and a grey-haired Eleanor steps into sunlight she hasn't felt free upon her face since her 40s. 2 guardsons jailers now bow as escorts. Richard, newly king, greets her with tears and laughter, proclaiming, "My lady mother, by the mercy of God, you are free." His first royal act, restore the Queen, but Eleanor does not slide back to luxury. She takes the reins of England as regent, while Richard charges off to the Third Crusade. She negotiates ransoms, snuffs, revolts, arranges alliances, this time not for self, but for country. 70-something and sharper than ever. When Richard dies childless, she rides again across the Pyrenees to fetch her granddaughter Blanche from Castilla bride for the French prince, turning former enemies into future peace. Even age cannot dull her instinct for political marriages. At last, in 1204, at Fontevraud Abbey, the candle gutters low. Eleanor rants a comet, now a legend's lips into a silence wider than any cell. Stone effigies of her and Henry lie hand in hand, sculpted reconciliation they never managed alive. Pilgrims walk past and see only marble tranquility. Yet listen, in the hush of your own room, centuries later, you can still hear the soft scrape of her pen, the rustle of maps, the unbroken thrum of a heart that never agreed to stay caged. Political marriage tried to bind her. Rebellion, imprisonment, and age tried to tame her. None succeeded. So let the night settle around you. Know that kingdoms rose and fell on the weight of one woman's will, that silence can thunder, and that even a locked tower cannot keep a brilliant mind from rewriting the story. Blow out your candle. Eleanor is free again, galloping through your dreams toward another impossible horizon. Imagine Paris in 1308. Winter, thin sunlight over the Seine, merchants pawning fur to chase away the chill, and a girl of 12 standing in Notre Dame, crown too big, vows too old. Isabella Capet, daughter of King Philip the Fair, is beauty in miniature clear eyes, clever heart, rigid training. Across the Channel waits Edward II of England, 23, awkward, already crowned, already in trouble. Their marriage isn't romance, it's a chess move meant to stall a 100-year feud. The treaty glitters. Isabella brings a dowry of peace. Edward promises Gascony's loyalty. Papal legates beam at their own diplomacy. But in the shadows of Westminster Hall lurks a complication-wearing peacock feathers Piers Gaveston, Edward's favourite, knighted soulmate, and rumour insists, something more. Where Edward goes, Piers follows. Where Edward smiles, Piers laughs first. A bride meets a wall. Isabella's bridal procession docks at Dover in a storm of trumpets. She steps onto English soil, expecting welcome. She finds Gaveston seated beside the king, wearing jewels from the royal treasury that should be hers. At the coronation feast, Piers carries the king's banner while Isabella is seated below earls. Chronicles record her face polite as polished ivory. Imagination adds a spark in her gaze that could ignite kindling. Edward lavishes land and titles on Gaveston, neglecting his queen's dower. Nobles grow livid. Isabella grows observant. She is 14 when Parliament exiles Piers the first time, 15 when Edward sneaks him back, 16 when barons haul Gaveston to Warwick Castle and remove the problem with a sword. The king weeps. Isabella learns. English politics feed on grudges and blood. She writes dutiful letters to her father, bears a healthy son Edward of Windsor and waits. She is, after all, a Capet princess raised among steel-eyed uncles who play statecraft like chess with real heads. Waiting is strategy. Despensers and desperation Edward finds new favourites. Hugh Despenser, the younger, and his scheming father. They latch to him like burrs, hoover up estates, insult barons, and leer at Isabella's French attendants. The Queen's household allowance is slashed, her jewels pawned for cash to feed the Despenser's appetite. One winter she begs linens from merchants because the royal wardrobe sits empty. A queen begging Parliament notes the scandal. Outside, famine and Scottish raids chew at the realm. Inside, Edward clings to Despenser counsel while alienating every great lord in England. Isabella, now 27 and no longer patient, aligns quietly with one of those lords. Roger Mortimer of Wigmore Handsome, ambitious, nursing his own Despenser, grown wounds. When Edward marches north in yet another failed Scottish campaign, Isabella is left to negotiate a truce with Robert the Bruce. She rides out in armour-trimmed cloak, brokers peace without a drop of blood, proves she can do what her husband cannot. London cheers. Edward sulks. Despensers plot. Soon after they confiscate Isabella's lands in retaliation for excessive independence. In public she bows, In private, she slips snakeskin resilience into her gloves. Exile, alliance, return. Philip VI now rules France, and Edward needs homage for Gascony. He hesitates to sail himself, dispensers fear assassination. So he sends Isabella queen. French by birth, theoretically harmless. She crosses to Paris with her eldest son, as bargaining chip, and once on French soil refashions herself from captive pawn to free queen. She refuses to return until the dispensers are dismissed. Edward refuses to yield. Stalemate. Enter Mortimer, escaped from the Tower, cloaked in French favour. Their partnership, political, passionate, both flowers fast. Chroniclers call her adulteress, propagandists call her saviour. Isabella calls herself the weeping mother of England. Together they gather exiles and mercenaries, strike a pact with Hainaut for ships and knights, and, in autumn 1326, sail for England under a banner stitched with the royal arms and the Latin for truth and justice. Coastal towns open gates, barons rush to her side. Edward flees west, dragging the dispensers like doomed luggage. Within 6 weeks, the younger dispenser is hanging from a 50-foot gallows, his corpse carved, his lands forfeit. The elder meets a similar end. Edward, shivering in Welsh marshlands, is captured and escorted, politely, toward Berkeley Castle, for his own safety. England exhales. A queen rules at midnight Parliament, guided by Isabella and Mortimer, declares 13-year-old Edward of Windsor the new king, Edward III. Isabella acts as regent, Mortimer as chief advisor. For 4 winters they hold power. They negotiate peace with Scotland, wrestle revenues into order, and reward allies. Criticism whispers about greed, about Mortimer's arrogance, about a queen's virtue, but after 15 years in Edward's shadow, Isabella drinks authority like warm wine. Yet power knives both ways. Young Edward III matures, bristles at Mortimer's dominance, resents his mother's closeness to the man rumoured to share her chambers. In 1330, on an October night, the 18-year-old king storms Nottingham Castle through a secret passage, arrests Mortimer, and compels his mother to step aside. Mortimer hangs. Isabella retires to Castle Rising with a generous allowance and fragrant garden luxury, not exile. Coda of a she-wolf chroniclers dub her Lupa Angliae, the she-wolf of France, more insult than title, yet it howls her legend into future centuries. But listen quietly. The wolf is also a mother who protected her cub, a strategist denied council seat yet seizing one, a bride asked to smile while favourites robbed her. Brutal? Yes. Political marriages forge claws. Isabella lives 2 more decades, tending roses, sewing altar cloths, doting on grandchildren, including the Black Prince. When she dies in 1358, she is buried in her wedding mantle, the same gown she wore as a 12-year-old pledge of Pisa silk mended, seams stronger, wolf heart still beating beneath. And if tonight you feel a draught at your window, perhaps it's just Norfolk wind, or perhaps a French queen still strolling the battlements, moonlight silvering her hair, checking that every gate is latched against new tyrants. Pull your blanket close and rest. Her watch is long, and she rarely sleeps. Long before anyone coined the phrase Old Alliance, Scotland and France understood each other the way 2 smaller cousins understand an overbearing neighbour. England loomed to the south of one, Burgundy to the east of the other, and survival often smelled like someone else's borrowed lavender. When treaties failed, they traded daughters, a crown for a tomb. The first bride to span the fog was Margaret of France, infant daughter of King Philip III. In 1281, she married 53-year-old Alexander III of Scotland, king who needed an heir as urgently as ships need masts. She arrived with dowry coffers rattling, French cooks gasping at haggis, and a tutor muttering prayers against northern weather. But fate claws quick. Within 2 years, Alexander's adult sons die in quick succession, and in 1290 the young queen herself collapses of a fever on the windswept road to Coupar. Scottish chroniclers note, the French lilies wilted in foreign air. The alliance barely outlives the funeral candles. Yet the idea takes root. If a French bride cannot save a king, perhaps she can still bruise England's pride. So Scotland keeps asking, and Paris keeps answering, sometimes with genuine diplomacy, sometimes with daughters no one quite knows what to do with. A lily for a lion. Fast forward to 1436. Margaret of Scotland, daughter of James I, crosses to France to wed the frail Dauphin Louis, later Louis XI. She is 11. He is 13, already suspicious of everyone alive. The wedding in Tours gleams with cloth of gold, but the court whispers that the Scottish accents sound harsh, that Margaret laughs too loud, that Louis prefers chess pieces to conversation. Still, for 3 summers she tries, translating ballads into French, teaching servants to pronounce loch without coughing. She writes home that roses here smell different, sweeter, but somehow sad. Consumption steals her at age 20, long before politics can bloom. France sends condolences. Scotland sends another treaty request. The traffic of brides continues. Each girl a fragile parchment sealed in wax. The Red Lions rose. Then comes Madeleine of Valois in 1537. Delicate, consumptive, adored by her father Francis I, she sails to Leith to marry James V of Scotland. The Scots greet her with bonfires high as towers. She steps ashore, smiling through coughs. Edinburgh Castle hangs tapestries to keep draughts at bay, but the damp creeps in anyway. 6 months later, the Summer Queen is dead, leaving James grief, struck and airless. Gravediggers mutter that the North Sea claims what it wants. France, perhaps feeling guilty, offers a sturdier bride. Mary of Guise, tall, composed, already seasoned by a brief first marriage. James sighs, signs, and welcomes her in 1538. She bears 2 sons who die in infancy, then a daughter, Mary Stuart, future queen of a stormier story. When James himself dies weeks after the birth, Mary of Guise stays to govern as regent, a French woman in a land of stubborn clan chiefs. She rules from damp Linlithgow corridors, letters home filtered through spies, Catholic Mass whispered while Protestant sermons thunder outside. Her marriage may have lasted little, but her widowhood steers Scotland for 7 unrestful years. Political brides sometimes wield more power once the groom is gone. A queen and her Guesseling war. Meanwhile, the alliance spins the other way. Scottish princesses shipped south to France. Think of Marie de Guiscard's pearls crossing the Channel, or Henrietta Stuart later softening Bourbon table centuries of tartan lace at Paris courts. Each girl a subtle promise of northern archers should England misbehave. Yet none stamped the alliance into legend like Mary, Queen of Scots, herself granddaughter of that French-bred alliance, widowed Dauphine of France at 18, thrust back onto a Scottish throne that greets her with suspicion and cold rain. Her first marriage to Francois II of France is short. Smallpox ends him before politics can truly begin. Her second marriage to her cousin Henry Darnley is disaster incarnate. Jealousy, murder, and explosion at Kirkerfield. Her third, to the Earl of Bothwell, sinks what little public favour remains. But every misstep Mary makes echoes down the old alliance corridor. France sees a pawn, England sees a threat, Scotland sees a mirror cracking. Mary's end an English block, an axe, a whispered, "Into thy hands, O Lord," doesn't break the alliance. It merely buries another bride under the weight of her vows. The contract outlives the couple. By 1558, the original treaty clause literally states, if either Scotland or France is invaded by England, the other must declare war within 10 days. That is the stark arithmetic behind every white satin gown packed into a trunk bound for Le Havre or Leith. Your body for a border, your smile for a siege. And yet, between the parchment lines, softer stories flicker. Mary of Guise teaching Scots noblewomen the newest French dances. Margaret of Scotland translating a Scottish lullaby into Parisian French so her ladies can sing her to sleep. Madeleine of Valois insisting the Scottish court keep pet rabbits because they reminded her of the Loire. The chronicles record dowries and troops. The bedchambers recorded laughter and homesick tears. Twilight of the Alliance. The old alliance dies officially in 1560 with the Treaty of Edinburgh, as Protestant Scotland courts Protestant England for survival. But even then, French silk still rustles in Holyrood's galleries, and Scots merchants in Bordeaux still toast "Vive la vieille alliance" on foggy nights. Later, in World War I trenches, Scottish regiments stationed beside French divisions revive the phrase, as if ghosts of medieval brides slip between shell bursts to remind soldiers that some vows linger longer than marble. So, as you settle deeper beneath your blanket, listen to the North Sea wind, half bagpipe, half accordion. Hear the creak of a ship's mast carrying another Margaret, another Mary, eyes fixed on a mist-shrouded shoreline. She may die young or rule long. Either way, her heartbeat is timed to the politics of two kingdoms. The Alliance asks only this: sacrifice the girl, so the border survives. Draw the covers tight. Somewhere beyond the window, gulls cry in both French and Gaelic, and a queen far from home whispers her husband's language in her sleep, trying to turn vows into shelter. Imagine Rome in the 9th of April 72. The marble streets are splashed with rain and saffron petals. Every bell in every campanile tolls until the pigeons lose their way. Inside St. Peter's, incense coils thick enough to write your name in. At the high altar stands Otto II, 21, heir to a German empire stitched together by his formidable father, Otto the Great. Across from him waits Princess Theophanu, niece to the Byzantine Emperor John Tzimiskes, ink-eyed, her veil shimmering with tiny gold tesserae like a portable mosaic. This union is no ordinary treaty. It splices east to west, Constantinople silk to Saxon iron. For Rome, it's a diplomatic thunderclap, the schism still decades away, but suspicion already crackling between Latin Pope and Greek Patriarch. Yet Otto wants legitimacy in the ancient city, and Byzantium wants a foothold in the volatile north, so they trade brides and titles, coins and relics, music and mistrust. The golden dowry Theophanu brings a dowry that glitters beyond jewels: court etiquette, perfume recipes, manuscripts of Euclid, spices that smell like sunrise. German chroniclers stare at her forkies. A forehand call it effeminate. She merely lifts an eyebrow, neither surprised nor offended. Cultural exchange can feel like conquest in miniature. Otto gifts her vineyards on the Rhine, a crown of interlaced lilies, and a coronation that brands her co-imperatrix, equal empress, not mere consort. Some bishops grumble, others gape. Otto's mother, the revered Empress Adelaide, watches the ceremony with measured grace, already weighing how two powerful women will share the same glittering chessboard. Two thrones, one hearth. Saxon courts are colder than Constantinople's marbled corridors. Theophanu orders braziers installed, tapestries woven with pomegranate threads, Greek phrases whispered into the ears of German pages. Soon, you can smell frankincense in Magdeburg and hear zithers plucking in Quedlinburg. Courtiers unlace their wool to try on silk. Scribes copy purple, inked gospels until their fingers cramp. Otto, fiery, tempered but fascinated, learns to pace his Latin with Greek endearments. Together they tour restless duchies Swabia, Bavaria, Lombardy, dispensing justice beneath imperial tents that smell of wool, myrrh, and wet horses. Some lords swear loyalty because of Otto's sword, others because of Theophanu's diplomacy, delivered in flawless Latin that leaves translators idle. They have 5 children in quick procession. 4 die young fevers, fate, the fragile arithmetic of medieval nurseries. Only one son survives. Otto III, a small, serious boy with eyes like northern storms and eastern dusk. Widowhood at 22, the 9th of June 83. Malaria slithers up the Tiber during a Roman summer, sticky with politics. Otto II burns with fever in his riverside palace. Theophanu paces beside the bed, braid uncoiling, physicians useless. By December, the emperor is dead at 28, buried in St. Peter's, while the German princes, mutter about succession. The empire looks enormous and hungry, and its new master is a 3-year-old child. Many expect Adelaide, the stalwart grandmother, to seize the regency. Instead, Adelaide steps aside with a regal nod toward the widow. Let the Empress from the sunrise rule. At 22, Theophanu becomes guardian of a realm stretching from the Baltic forests to the Mediterranean lagoons. Saxon dukes test her with rebellions. Slavic tribes raid the eastern marches. Lombard counts bristle in Italian valleys. She answers with parchment and steel charters sealed in purple. Armies led by seasoned captains who know better than to underestimate a woman wearing both widow's black and an emperor's eagle. The purple regency picture her on campaign. A mobile throne room inside a leather, walled pavilion, maps weighted by rock crystal, couriers kneeling in mud. She reinscribes imperial authority with ink so dark it looks wet weeks later. She coins money bearing Theophanu Imperatrix, shocking every merchant who expected Otto's profile. She confirms church lands, but only after bishops sweat through Greek interrogations on doctrine. She sends envoys to Cordoba, to Kiev, to the Caliphate in Cairo East, remembers East. And yet, home is a boy with feverish dreams of Caesar and Constantine. Little Otto III studies under scholars Theophanu handpicks from both Aachen and Athens. Nights, she tells him stories of his 2 legacies, the eagle of Charlemagne and the double-headed phoenix of Byzantium. He promises to fuse them someday into a single Christian empire. She smiles, knowing dreams are light that history loves to douse. Quiet triumphs. By 988, uprisings have stalled, borders hold, and German nobles grudgingly respect the foreign empress who governs without tantrum or visor. She hosts Christmas court in Mainz, candles mirrored against snow, platters of spiced carp, Latin hymns stitched with Greek refrains. Chroniclers note that courtiers bow a fraction deeper to her than to most kings they fear and admire the same calm. But regency is a candle burning at both ends. Long winters sap health. In the 9th of June 91, returning from a progress through Flanders, Theophanu falls ill at Nijmegen. She drafts last orders, seals the regency formally to Adelaide until Otto III comes of age, and whispers a final bedtime lesson to her 10-year-old son. Rule justly, but dream boldly. Then she slips away, only 31, leaving behind libraries of strange letters and a court forever scented with cardamom. Echoes in stone and parchment Otto III will reign only briefly grand plans. Abrupt death yet every vision of a renovated Roman Empire traces back to his mother's night-lit councils. Monasteries, she patronized copy manuscripts for centuries. Churches modelled after her Byzantine taste sprout domes across the Rhine. Even her fork survives, eventually accepted by Europe, small testament to how foreign ideas become household things. In Cologne Cathedral today, a lead sarcophagus bears her name in Greek and Latin, side by side like clasped hands. Pilgrims pass without noticing the subtle fragrance of old incense still caught in the stone. But if you lean close, you might hear the rustle of silk over armour, the clink of a fork against silver, a lullaby whispered in 2 languages to a wide-eyed child about empires yet unbuilt. So settle back beneath your blankets, feel the faint heat of a distant brazier, the flick of candlelight across parchment. Remember that sometimes a political marriage stitches 2 halves of a divided world, and sometimes when the groom's candle gutters out the bride alone must keep the seam from unravelling. Moonlit embers settle over Theophanu's Rhine-lit courts, and the empire's tents fold for the night. But 115 years earlier, before Byzantine silk ever warmed Saxon winters, another bride had crossed the Alps in a flurry of papal banners, setting the stage for a civil war that would split England like a cracked bell. Matilda of England is 8 years old when her father, King Henry I, escorts her to Westminster Abbey, hands trembling only slightly as he places a miniature coronet on her small head. England has never crowned a child empress before, but today Matilda is sworn Lady of the English, betrothed across distant mountains to Henry V, Holy Roman Emperor, 23, iron-jawed, and already tangled in German rebellions. It is 1000, 110. For Matilda, marriage is a letter of credit signed in her own future. She boards a ship at Dover, cheeks salted by Channel spray, and does not return for 16 years. A bride in iron sailing, riding, and snowbound coaching bring her to Mainz at last. The imperial court finds the Saxon dust unsettled by this clever Anglo-Norman girl who can read Latin better than many bishops. Henry V baptizes her name into the German tongue. Matildian crowns her Empress of the Romans in the domed cathedral of Worms. The gold circlet is heavy, but Matilda stands straighter than the candle flames that quiver around her. Henry teaches her protocol. She teaches him English hunting rhymes. They dine under frescoes of Constantine, plot alliances with Lombard princes, and occasionally wage war together. Matilda riding behind the standards in bright mail, her long hair braided beneath a copper helm. Chroniclers sputter. An empress at siege works? Matilda just laughs, a flint spark sound that startles scribes. Yet even an empress catches rumour like thorns. German nobles grumble that she is foreign. Roman clergy mutter that Henry's war against Pope Paschal will damn them both. Between campaigns, she kneels beside her husband in chilly chapels, praying for an heir who never comes. The palace corridors whisper of infertility, of omen, of divine displeasure. Matilda tightens her belt, learns to live among murmurs. Widow and heir but not here. May 1125. Henry V dies at Utrecht. Voice a hoarse rasp requesting absolution. Matilda is 23, veiled in costly black. Holding the imperial seal she must surrender to German electors. They nod politely, then sweep her aside. The empire will not entertain a sole female ruler. She packs her reliquaries, her manuscripts, and a lifetime's worth of authority into cedar chests, then turns west toward a father who still has no legitimate English son. King Henry I receives her in Rouen. His only lawful heir, her brother William, sank with the White Ship 4 years earlier, swallowed by cold, solent waves. Now he sees in Matilda not a daughter returned, but the last thread of his dynasty. He demands every baron swear fealty to her as future queen. Many do so with hollow smiles, palms still smelling of sword pommels. Matilda accepts, chin high. She has worn a heavier crown already. Marriage, take to succession, however, requires alliances like beams beneath a roof. In 1128, Henry I marries his widowed empress to Geoffrey, Count of Anjou, 15-haired, impetuous, called Plantagenet for the sprig of broom he tucks in his helmet band. Matilda is 11 years his senior, still signed Imperatrix in correspondence, not impressed by adolescent swagger. On their wedding night, rumour says, she allows him one kiss, then tasks a maid with blowing out the candle. The political bargain is sealed, if not the marital bond. Years pass. They quarrel, reconcile, beget sons Henry, Geoffrey, William heirs, half Norman, half Angevin, wholly ambitious. But England, restless and chauvinistic, watches from across the channel, wondering if a woman can really command. The king is dead long live. Whom? December 1135. Henry I dies after a feast of lampreys. Matilda is in Anjou, too distant to press her claim. Seizing the moment, her cousin Stephen of Blois sails to London, brandishes oaths quickly forgotten, and within weeks the bishops crown him king with comfortable ceremony. English barons breathe easier. Stephen is affable, male, pliant. Matilda rages. Geoffrey forges shields. In 1139 she lands on Sussex shores with a retinue of knights, banners bearing the imperial eagle stitched to Norman lions. Thus begins the Anarchy 19 winters of civil war, where allegiances flip like coins and England becomes a board of blood-wet chess squares. Lady of the English Matilda wins her first great gamble at Lincoln in 1141, capturing Stephen in battle. She enters Winchester to claim the treasury, the Tower's keys, and nearly the throne. Yet power slips like river silt. Londoners resent her blunt demand for taxes. Bishops resent her refusal to grovel. When she approaches Westminster for coronation, city gates slam shut against her. Stephen's loyalists rally. Matilda retreats to the walled town of Oxford. There, winter grips the Thames. Stephen's forces besiege the castle under a moon that freezes breath. One night, Matilda, wrapped in a white cloak against the snow, slips through a postern gate, crosses the ice-rimmed river, and trudges 6 miles to Wallingford imperial grit turned local legend. Chroniclers gape. The Empress walked on water, but miracles will not break stalemate. Stephen is exchanged for captured allies, battles see, saw, and England starves between 2 banners. A king in waiting 1,135 bleeds into 1,148. Matilda, weary of siege and politics, withdraws to Normandy to secure her eldest son Henry's inheritance. She governs duchies, quells barren rebellions, writes scathing letters to monks who question her virtue, and most important, schools young Henry in the art of relentless ambition. He will need it. In 1153, Henry crosses to England with a force smaller than hope, yet sharper than despair. Stephen, old and grief-struck after losing his son Eustace, agrees to the Treaty of Wallingford. He will reign until death, then recognise Henry as heir. When Stephen dies the next year, England finally crowns Matilda's dynasty, even if not Matilda herself. Her son becomes Henry II, founder of Plantagenet glory, husband to Eleanor of Aquitaine, ruler of an empire wider than dreams. Twilight of an Empress Matilda spends her last years at ruin, advising Henry through letters wax-sealed with the imperial eagle. She arbitrates disputes between Normandy's abbeys, sponsors bridges for pilgrims, and orders copies of Augustine sent to far monasteries. When floods threaten the city she once fled as a child, locals recall she organised sandbag defences from her sickbed, voice steady as any general's. She dies in September 1167, aged 65. On her tomb is carved the title denied her in life: Great Empress, daughter of a king, mother of a king. No English queen would reign in her own right until her great-great-granddaughter, little Eleanor's namesake, Eleanor of Provence, guided the realm behind another Henry. But the hinge was Matilda, the empress who walked over frozen rivers, who carried 2 crowns in her luggage, and who raised a son to finish the war she almost won. So draw your blanket tighter. Hear the clink of iron doors at Oxford, the hush of snow under velvet steps, the distant roar of an empire that once called her Augusta. In that softened dark, remember, sometimes a political marriage seeds a civil war, and sometimes the bride, though never seated on the throne still, reshapes a kingdom by sheer unbroken will. The year is 1016, and morning fog wraps the upper Rhine like unspun wool. Gisela, of Swabia 23, twice widowed, mother to 2 small boy, stands on a river wharf beside crates of applewood furniture and bridal linens stitched with lions. She is tall, quietly composed, hair the colour of last year's harvest. The empire regards her as damaged goods, a broodmare with political mileage, valuable lands, but little voice. Sliding toward her along the planks comes Conrad of Spire, broad-shouldered, 30, a Salian count who has spent half his life watching richer cousins steal imperial favours. Today, his luck changes. Their eyes meet. Chroniclers later insist they smiled. In a century when smiles are currency, that matters. 3 rings, 3 trials. Gisela's first husband died grasping at Lombard titles. The second succumbed to malaria near Piacenza. She buried them both with stately prayers, then safeguarded her son's Swabian inheritance like a tigress in a chapel. Marrying again means risking those estates but also gaining a stronger shield. Conrad's motive is straightforward. By wedding Gisela, he links himself to Carolingian bloodlines through her mother and unlocks Swabia's strategic passes over the Alps. Yet unlike so many bridegrooms in iron shoes, he kneels when he greets her. Rumour claims she made him promise to respect her dowry charters before she accepted his hand. He promised and kept the parchment intact. Co-crowned in Mainz 3 winters later, in 1027, Emperor Henry II dies childless. German electors gather in dusty chapels to weigh rival claims. Conrad's lineage is strong, but so is that of his cousin, Duke Conrad the Younger. The tiebreaker? Gisela, Her Carolingian veins shimmer like gold leaf in genealogy scrolls. She tours abbeys, distributing alms, reminding bishops that a stable realm needs both sword and legacy, and she can supply the latter. On the 26th of March, they crown Conrad, King Conrad II, in Mainz Cathedral. Yet what shocks the onlookers happens minutes later. Gisela receives a separate anointing and a crown wrought with equal height. Not queen consort. Regina et imperatrix futura queen now. Empress once Rome is secured. A chronicler records dryly. 2 suns rose in one sky, and no eclipse followed. The quiet partnership. From the start, they split the labour, like seasoned craftsmen. Conrad marches Bavaria, Burgundy, Italy gathering oaths, subduing rebellions. Gisela governs the interior. She arbitrates land disputes, confirms abbey privileges, and, when plague strikes Swabia, orders granaries opened before nobles can protest. Commoners begin calling her Mutter Gisela, Mother Gisela, a title rarely pinned to women in ermine. Unlike Theophanu's scented revolution or Matilda's storm-forged defiance, Gisela rules through measured constancy. She writes not manifestos but margins, annotating charters in her own hand with neat red ink. Let justice be equal for serf and count. Scribes whisper that if parchment spoke, it would sound like her. Conrad, for his part, spends months beneath Lombard sun besieging Pavia. When emissaries ride north with victories, Gisela arranges Thanksgiving masses and quietly collects promises from newly grateful bishops. Their letters, preserved in Regensburg's archives, read less like royal decrees and more like diary pages. My beloved, the vines of Speyer grow heavy, return before harvest. My dearest, the siege is nearly won. Kiss the children for me. For medieval monarchs, tenderness is rarer than relics. Their balance startles the realm into loyalty. Rome, finally Easter, 1027. Pope John XIX welcomes them to St. Peter's Basilica floors mosaicked with sunlight. Conrad receives the imperial orb, but when the Pope turns to crown Gisela, even jaded Romans lean forward. No German empress has shared the rite in equal pomp since Otto eyes Adelaide. The hymn swells, the tiara settles. 2 thrones gleam side by side like a matched pair of blades. They process through the streets, distributing alms from sacks of Swabian coin. Children chase, merchants shout blessings. A raven lands on a cornice, calls 3 times good omen, Rome decides. An empress at the forge back north. Gisela now hammers policy. She expands the peace of God edicts to protect peasants during wartime, persuades Conrad to limit trial by ordeal in ecclesiastic courts, and founds a hospice for pilgrims at Goslar, where miners and monks dine at the same oak tables. Conrad jokes she spends more silver on charity than the treasury can mint. She replies by introducing stricter coinage to curb inflation. Swabian thrift balancing Salian ambition. Their sons note the model. Henry, future Emperor Henry III, learns statecraft at her elbow. Younger Hermann inherits Swabia, guided by her meticulous estate ledgers. Even Matilda, their daughter, receives education in canon law and psalmody. Dusk over Speyer, but empires like harvests bow to seasons. In early 1043, Conrad falls ill after campaigning against Bohemian rebels. He rides home to Speyer, collapsing beneath cathedral vaults he founded. Gisela sits vigil, reading the consolations of St. Augustine until candle wax floods her knuckles. Conrad dies on the 10th of December. Bells toll across hills, where vines now lie dormant. Gisela, 52, wears widowhood lightly but purposefully. She guides Henry III through his first imperial diet, reminding him within earshot of every duke that leniency can steady a throne faster than vengeance. Only when the realm is firmly under her son's grasp does she retreat to the Benedictine monastery at Goslar she once endowed. There, Cloister Chronicle says, she gardens rosemary and copies gospel glosses until pneumonia stills her quill. In February 1043, only 2 months after Conrad. Even death seems reluctant to part their story for long. They are buried in matching red sandstone tombs at Spire, carved fingers almost touching. Pilgrims pause, reading the inscription. Concordia regnorum, concordia conjugum. Harmony of realms, harmony of spouses. A candle against thunder history favours turbulence Theophanu's intrigue. Matilda's Warfaresso Gisella and Conrad often slide between the pages, too calm to catch the scholar's eye. Yet their marriage proves a different truth. Sometimes political unions build peace by offering an empire a pair of steady hands instead of one clenched fist. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, imagine the gentle scratch of her pen, the soft thunk of his gauntlet placed beside it. Two sounds in one room, no discord, only partnership. Empires rarely hum so quietly. Let that hush guide you into dreams where crowns weigh less and alliances hold like braided gold. Picture a parchment map of the 12 and 1300s. Hungary sprawled like a sleeping stag, Bohemia a muscular lion guarding forested hills, Poland a restless eagle with feathers still ruffled by pagan raids from the Baltic. Between them windroads lined with poplars and toll collectors, each kingdom eager for salt, silver, or a strategic river crossing. When gold was scarce, girls crossed borders instead, embroidered sleeves billowing like merchant flags. 1. Margaret of Hungary and the Byzantine chessboard. Our first wagon rattles east in 1185. Inside sits Princess Margaret Arpad, teenage daughter of King Bela III of Hungary. She can quote psalms in Latin and laugh in 3 dialects. Ahead awaits Byzantine Emperor Isaac II. Angelos, newly crowned and desperate for Western allies. Isaac's envoy told Bela, "Bring your daughter, and Thrace need not bleed." The king did, loading Margaret's dowry chests with silk, silver mines, and an entire border fortress. In Constantinople, Margaret's new name becomes Maria Greek, courtesy for a Magyar bride. Court poets praise her red gold hair. Eunuch bureaucrats tally her dowry like accountants in a reliquary. The marriage buys Hungary access to Aegean trade and buys Isaac a buffer against Norman invasion. But empire politics are fickle. In 1195, Isaac is overthrown. Margaret flees with their children to Bulgarian custody, clutching a crown now worthless as tin. A barter bride wins safety only until the board flips. Yet the treaty's faint ink outlives emperors. Byzantium never again marches north in full force, and Hungarian merchants keep a taste for cinnamon soaked in Aegean brine. Margaret lives out her days in cloistered calm, embroidering icons that whisper of Danube fog. 2. Kunigunda of Poland and Bohemia's silver veins. Slide the map west to 1230. In Krakow W's limestone citadel, Princess Kunigunda Piasnik named King's Little Wonder, for her fierce archery receives a marriage contract bigger than her own archery range. She will wed King Wenceslas I of Bohemia. He craves access to Poland's amber roots. Her father longs for Bohemian cavalry against Mongol incursions. She rides south through Beskid passes, humming Slavic hymns. At Prague, her bridal procession passes beneath the still rising spires of St. Vitus. Wenceslaus greets her with a falcon and a leggerone, a compliment. The other, a balance sheet marking mine revenues. Small talk here is pure metallurgy. Kutna silver, Olomouc pennies, mint rights dividing love like decimals. Kunigunda adapts quickly. Chronicles show her founding hospitals, endowing convents, and, when Mongol scouts appear at Moravia's edge, persuading Wenceslaus to dispatch knights north not from sentiment, but from Treaty Clause 4, Line 7. Bohemia shall defend Poland against Eastern scourge. In barter, bride logic, cavalry equals affection. After 20 placid years, she dies at Radchany, candle smoke curling over a treasury 3 times richer than on her wedding day. Her tomb bears dual coats of arms piast eagle and Bohemian lyre nested like 2 hands. Merchants on the old amber road still cross themselves twice at her chapel, for profit owes gratitude to a bride who could balance ledgers with prayer. 3. Jadwiga's paper crown and the Crossroads Kingdom. Now pull the map north to 1000. 384. Poland is crownless again, and lords recall past bargains. When in doubt, import a monarch. They choose Jadwiga of Anjou, 10-year-old daughter of Louis the Great of Hungary. She journeys from Buda, through snow-dusted pines, unaware that her coronation in Krakow will name her king, not queen gender sidestepped, so no husband may outrank her. But treaties nudge children like chess pieces. First, advisors plan to marry her to William of Habsburg. The Habsburgs promise Alpine passes. Then they pivot toward Grand Duke Jogaila of Lithuania, pagan yet formidable, offering miles of forest and horse archer legions against Teutonic knights. Poland weighs. Silver Alps or wooden longbows? They pick longbows. A Habsburg envoy storms out. Jadwiga weeps once, then signs. She is 13 when Jogaila arrives, age 35, baptized Władysław at Wawel Cathedral the night before their vows. In Bartermath, Jadwiga gives a crown. Jogaila gives Christian conversion and 200,000 square kilometers of Lithuanian wilderness. The kingdom doubles in size before Jadwiga finishes growing. History notes her gentleness. She sells royal jewels to rebuild Krakow University, walks incognito to hospitals, funds a Bible translation into Lithuanian. Her marriage, political to the last clause, seeds an empire that will later check German expansion for 2 centuries. She dies in childbirth at 25. Her baby follows days later. Władysław kneels beside 2 coffins and understands treaties can cost more than tribute. Yet Poland-Lithuania endures, the largest state in Europe for a breathless moment, because a girl agreed to be pawn and bridge simultaneously. Barter brides sometimes barter themselves into sainthood. Jadwiga is canonized in 1997, centuries after her paper crown cracked to dust. 4. Ilona and the Ottoman Shadow. One final coach rolls forward. Ilona Zrinyi, 17th century warrior princess of Croatia. Hungary, who marries Imre Thököly, rebel prince funded by the Ottoman Sultan. The empire has changed. Gunpowder now writes treaties, but the barter remains. Ilona trades fortress keys for her children's safety, marries under cannon smoke, and later defends Munkacs castle with flaming tar bundles when the Habsburgs besiege it. Even muskets cannot fully replace matrimony in the diplomatic toolkit. A bride's signature still turns walls into bargaining chips. Lullaby over the Vistula, draw your blanket closer and listen. Hoofbeats fade upon the Vltava, the Danube, the Wisła. Somewhere, a girl with frostbitten fingers lifts her veil to greet a stranger who smells of armoured horse sweat and new-minted coin. She is the price of peace for a season, the hinge of maps yet redrawn. She may live to plant vineyards in soil once foreign, or she may vanish after a single harsh winter, her dowry melting into someone else's ledger. What remains? Roads paved because a bride's carriage needed smoother passage. Monasteries founded because guilt demanded grace gifts. Languages spliced because lullabies followed mothers into new cradles. Central Europe's barter brides did not always wield scepters, but every border they touched still hums with their footfalls. So sleep easy beneath a quilt of imaginary heraldrylions, eagles, double crosses, knowing the stitches were pulled tight by hands you may never find in textbooks. And if the wind whistles like wagon wheels outside your window, it is only the golden road remembering another daughter sent to buy a moment's quiet between restless kingdoms. Picture Palermo in 1186. Lemon trees flash in a November storm, sea spray slaps the Norman battlements, and 32-year-old Princess Constance Hauteville kneels in the cathedral built by her grandfather King Roger II. She is late to the marriage market, by medieval standards long, rumoured to be cloistered after a prophecy said her marriage would ruin Sicily. Yet ruin or not, politics can wait no longer. At the altar stands Henry Hohenstaufen, 21, son of the Holy Roman Emperor Frederick Barbarossa, tall, fair, with the impatience of a man more used to war camps than wedding choirs. The Pope blesses their union in hopes of knitting the empire to Rome. Meanwhile, Sicilian nobles fidget. They've grown fond of local rules-unlit courts, Arabic scholars, Greek mosaics. A German emperor's son could change the climate in more ways than weather. Constance's dowry sparkles. Not just gold, but the right of succession to one of Europe's richest thrones. She is the only legitimate heir. Her nephew William II is childless. Everyone in the nave calculates the odds if William dies. Sicily and southern Italy fall to Henry. The choir sings Te Deum. The barons count ships. A delayed honeymoon of sieges Henry. Spirits Constance north across the Alps to be crowned Queen of Germany in the Red Sand Cathedral at Milan. She swaps silk for ermine, learns to shiver, and writes home that snow looks like sea foam that has lost its way. Frederick Barbarossa gloats. His dynasty now has a Mediterranean key. But when William II unexpectedly survives another decade, the newlyweds cool their ambitions. Henry campaigns in Lombardy. Constance grants charters, founds a Benedictine house at Trifles, and waits, 39 years old, still childless, prophecy shadowing every step. The death that changes everything. William II dies without male issue. Sicilian magnates panic. Rather than honour Constance, they crown William's distant cousin Tancred of Lech, an illegitimate Hauteville, small in stature but quick with bribes. The papacy hesitates better a pliable bastard than a powerful Hohenstaufen. Henry and Constance roar south. Imperial banners cross the Brenner Pass. Siege engines creak toward Naples. But malaria, logistics, and pocketed coins slow them. Tancred captures Constance at Salinois, the rightful queen seized like contraband silk. He parades her in chains through the streets of Palermo to show the people their foreign empress. Crowds watch in uneasy silence. Legend says Constance met every stare without blinking once. Papal leverage. Tancred dares not kill her, murdering a crowned German queen, invites iron reprisal. He ships her north to Pope Celestine III, bargaining for recognition. Celestine receives Constance in guarded comfort while weighing letters from Henry demanding his wife back under threat of war. The Pope calculates. Release the bride, preserve the Church's fragile balance, detain her, risk Hohenstaufen wrath. He chooses diplomacy. Constance walks free under papal escort, remarking, sources claim, that captivity taught her Sicilian almond cake is overrated. Reunited, Henry sharpens his invasion plans. Constance, now 41, announces she is pregnant. Court physicians mutter, miracle or maneuver. Protesters whisper she is too old. She answers by riding at the head of the army, gravid beneath parade armourer, walking refutation of doubt. Palermo taken, kingdom won. The imperial host lands in Apulia. Tancred is dead. His boy, king's son, struggles under regent uncles. Castle after castle surrenders to the empress who never flinched in chains. Palermo opens its gates on the 25th of December. Henry VI is crowned King of Sicily in the very cathedral where Constance once prayed as a princess. She stands beside him, 6 months pregnant, a living promise that the Hohenstaufen line will root in island soil, a heir in a silk pavilion. In the heat of late summer 1194, Constance chooses to give birth in the open square at Iasi, inside a silk pavilion pitched before baronial witnesses proof against rumours of swapped infants. On the 26th of September, she delivers Frederick, healthy and gold-haired under the Apennine sun. She presents him to the assembled Lombard lords, proclaiming in clear Latin, "Behold the son given by God and Sicily. No one dare call impostor. The child will someday become Frederick II, Stupa Mundi, wonder of the world. But tonight he is only a heartbeat bundled in brocade." Constance is 43, triumphant and briefly at peace. Widow in a nest of thorns, peace is brief. Henry VI dies suddenly at Messina in 1197. Fever, poison, fate. Sicily teeters. German captains eye the treasury. Papal envoys eye Frederick, now 3. Constance moves fast. She sends German troops home with generous pay, denounces northern ambitions, and places her son under direct papal protection, hoping Rome will shield him until he reaches majority. She accepts the title Regent Queen of Sicily, ruling from Palermo's mosaic-lit halls, balancing Muslim scholars, Greek merchants, Norman knights and island tripod, she alone seems able to steady. She governs only a year. In November 1198 she feels death's fingertips malarial relapse. Some say, or stroke. On her last day she dictates a will in flawless legal Latin, entrusting Frederick to Pope Innocent III, stipulating Sicilian independence from imperial claims, and requesting burial in Palermo's cathedral near her father. She dies at 44, leaving a toddler king and a powder keg diplomacy. Echo of a captive crown political marriage, tried to make Constance a pawn, a hostage, then a queen in shackles. She answered each twist by rewriting the board. Out. Negotiating popes. Out. Marching illegitimate usurpers. Out. Living the prophecy that said her union would destroy Sicily. Perhaps it did, in the sense that all change is a kind of destruction. But it also birthed Frederick II, whose eclectic court of Arabic astronomers, Jewish physicians, and Christian jurists would dazzle an age still half asleep. Draw your blanket tighter and listen to the Mediterranean surf echo in distant night traffic. Hear the clatter of chains drop from a captive queen's wrists, the hush as she lifts an emperor's infant for a skeptical crowd to see. Somewhere beyond your window, lemon blossoms drift in darkness, and a German lullaby merges with Sicilian crickets, the sound Constance might have sung to the child who would inherit her stubborn, sun-bright will. It is a cool October dawn in 1469, and Isabella of Castile waits behind the grille of a Franciscan monastery in Valladolid. She is 18, auburn-haired, with grey eyes that miss little. Her half-brother, King Henry IV, wants her wed to a Portuguese prince he can control. She wants Ferdinand of Aragon lithe, intelligent, a year younger, and, crucially, a partner who shares her appetite for rule. A diplomatic deadlock hangs in the pre-dawn chill. The iron bolt slides. Ferdinand steps into the cloister, cloaked as a humble mule driver, having crossed Castile's border in disguise. Inside, a sympathetic bishop holds the rings. The vows are spoken quickly, quietly, under flickering candles that spit like conspirators. By sunrise, Castile and Aragon are married, even if half their nobles will not recognize it for years. Of 2 crowns and 1 coat of arms, Castile is wheat fields and stout stone towns. Aragon is Mediterranean wind and pine, dark Pyrenees. Their languages differ by lilt, their laws differ by parchment thickness, yet both realms balance on knife edges. Castile against internal civil war, Aragon against French expansion. Marriage, then, is not romance, it is reinforcement. Still, the first months are tender enough. Ferdinand calls Isabella "me lose me light" while she teases his Catalan accent. They ride side by side, armor creaking in unison, visiting Cortes assemblies to bargain for recognition. Most Cortesmen concede on one condition: the crowns remain legally separate 2 sovereignties, 1 marital hinge. So they craft a symbol, a quartered shield, Castile's tower and Leon's lion, sharing space with Aragon's red gold stripes and Sicily's black eagle. Above it, the motto, Tanto Monta, they amount to the same. A neat fiction, but fiction sharpens into reality when enough banners carry it. Civil war by candlelight. Henry IV dies in 1474. Isabella races to Segovia and, in a midnight ceremony under dripping torches, has herself proclaimed Queen of Castile. Rival factions push Henry's daughter, Juana la Beltraneja, forward. Portugal backs her claim with soldiers. French gold whispers through bishopric halls. Castile divides again, this time with Aragonese horsemen galloping at Isabella's side. For 5 years, war flickers across wheat plains. Ferdinand commands cavalry at Toro, while Isabella rides inspection lines in padded mail, ensuring supplies reach camp and clerks record pay. Chroniclers marvel, a queen who audits ledgers at midnight, then kneels for dawn mass before touring field hospitals. When Portuguese lances finally retreat, Castile hails her as reina propria queen in her own right, not by her husband's shadow. Peace terms signed. Ferdinand kneels in public, and kisses her gloved hand and act equal parts devotion and statecraft. Every baron reading that gesture understands. Their partnership is indivisible, even if their realms remain inked apart. Domestic diplomacy. They rule from separate chancelleries, but shared council tables. Isabella reforms the coinage, introducing the Maravedi stamped with both initials, while Ferdinand negotiates with Italian city-states, securing Aragon's holdings in Naples. In the palace at Alcalá, they debate policy deep into the night. She argues for centralized justice. He counters with regional furos. Quills fly, tempers flare. But in the morning, the edict carries both signatures, back to back like cross swords. Their household is equally balanced. 5 children survive infancy. Isabella, Juan, Joanna, Maria, Catherine, each betrothed like chess pieces to Portugal, Habsburg, Austria, Burgundy, England. The nursery hums with lullabies in Castilian, Catalan, Latin prayers, and the occasional Aragonese curse when a prince kicks his nurse. Yet shared power does not erase strain. Ferdinand maintains a long liaison with Catalina de Sada. Isabella bears it with public serenity and private fury, channeling hurt into piety. She funds scholars translating classical texts, copies treatises on governance into her own neat hand, and prays for patience. Patience, she decides, is also statecraft. The Reconquista's final stone, Granadafe, last Muslim emirate of Iberia, glimmers in the Sierra Nevada like an emerald caught in snow. For 2 centuries, Castile and Aragon have nibbled its borders. Isabella and Ferdinand make it priority 1. Complete the Reconquista, unify the peninsula under Christianity, and secure southern trade routes. The campaign drags a decade, 1482, 1492. Ferdinand directs sieges in person lofty Santa Fe's timber walls, Mar-Laga's starved garrison, while Isabella organizes a supply pyramid. Grain from Castile, artillery from northern foundries, war loans underwritten by Genoese bankers, reassured by her ironclad promissory notes. She visits the front in a scarlet cloak, white horse trampling the dust, the Red Queen rallying morale. The 2nd of January, 1492. The emirs surrender keys of the Alhambra. Isabella ascends a tower, unfurls the quartered banner. Chronicler Andres Bernaldez claims she wept at the sunset glow on palace tiles. If so, the tears were practical. They lubricated the hinge, closing 8 centuries of Muslim-ruled Al-Andalus. A world unlocked, Granada conquered. Isabella's gaze lifts beyond seas. An Italian navigator named Cristobal Colon petitions for ships to reach India by sailing west. Ferdinand's council scoffs. Risky, expensive. Isabella pawns her own jewelry, legend exaggerates, but she does divert personal funds to cover fleet costs. In August 1492, 3 caravels slip from Palos de la Frontera, bearing Castile's red and gold crosses. Months later, they return with news of islands thick with unknown forests and souls to convert. The Catholic monarchs now preside over 2 dawns, one gilding Iberian cathedrals, another rising beyond an Atlantic horizon. Yet even sunrise casts shadows. Their 1492 decree expels unconverted Jews from Spain, shredding centuries of convivencia. The nascent Spanish Inquisition hunts heresy with fires stoked by both royal signatures. History will laud their unity while revisiting its cost in ash and exile. Last letters, last lessons in 1504. Illness grips Isabella. Fevered, she dictates her will. Succession to Joanna and her Habsburg husband Philip. Instructions for humane treatment of Indios in new colonies, and a plea that Ferdinand remain regent until their grandson Charles comes of age. She dies in Medina del Campo, shrouded in the coarse Franciscan habit she requested. No silk, no jewels, only a wooden cross pressed to her chest. Ferdinand weeps, then rules Aragon 6 more restless years, marrying a French princess to spite Castilian nobles who doubt his regency. But when he dies in 1516, He asks to rest beside Isabella at Granada's royal chapel. Under the shadow of the palace they conquered together. Within their marble caskets lie 2 crowns, one forged in Castilian iron, grey, one in Aragonese sea blue. They never legally merged, yet Spain, as the world will know it, coalesces around their bones. So ease into sleep with the rustle of their double-stitched banner in your ears. Lions and towers, stripes and eagles, all caught in one slow wind. Somewhere a mule-driver's lantern still swings along a dusty Castilian road, escorting a disguised prince toward a cloister door, and history toward a sunrise neither bride nor groom could yet imagine. A bride in a dragon's nest. Picture Rome in 1493. Marble palaces gleam under torchlight, and the Tiber smells of jasmine and sewage. The new pope, Alexander VI, Rodrigo Borgia, plans a grand spectacle in the Vatican gardens. Trumpets blast. Cardinals sweat inside scarlet robes. At center stage stands his golden-haired daughter, Lucrezia Borgia, just 13, her gown spun from cloth of gold and embroidered pomegranates. Tonight, she is betrothed to Giovanni Sforza, Lord of Pesaro, a political pawn wrapped in Milanese satin. The match is pure strategy. Milan's Sforza dukes will safeguard Borgia interests against French ambition, but Rodrigo's alliances are like chess pieces on a melting board. The moment the French King Charles VIII marches into Italy in 1494, Giovanni's diplomatic worth crumbles like old mortar. Rodrigo decides the marriage must end preferably without dowry refund. How to annul a marriage, Borgia style. The Pope convenes a secret consistory. Whispers slip through curtain folds. Impotentia. They mutter consummation due to the groom's alleged impotence. Giovanni sputters, threatens to expose family scandals. Rodrigo counters by ordering clerks to note every intimate rumour in Latin. Giovanni reads the writing on the wall and signs the annulment in December 1497. Lucrezia, at 15, is single again and more marketable than ever. Chroniclers spin lurid tales of incestuous banquets and poison rings. Reality is simpler, if no less ruthless. Marriage in Renaissance Italy is a lever, and the Borgias pull hard. From Sforza to Aragon, and back to paperwork. The very next summer, Lucrezia weds Alfonso of Aragon, illegitimate son of the King of Naples. This seals a fragile peace between papal Rome and Aragonese Naples, at least until Rodrigo needs French favour again. Alfonso proves kind, handsome, even affectionate. For a moment, Lucrezia tastes domestic ease. She bears a son, Rodrigo, whose cradle is carved with Borgia bulls and Aragonese stripes. But a new French king looms, and Naples becomes expendable. In 1500, Alfonso is attacked on the steps of St. Peter's by masked assassins likely in the pay of Lucrezia's brother, Cesare Borgia, consolidating power. Alfonso lingers, bandaged, until strangled in his sickbed. Lucrezia is 20. Her pillow smells of salt and grief. Papal secretaries prepare another annulment, this time citing irreconcilable political necessity. Within months she is engaged again, this time to Alfonso d'Este, heir to Ferrara's ducal throne. The Este family recoils at Borgia infamy, but covets papal favour. They demand a dowry big enough to pave a new palace. Rodrigo agrees, empties the Vatican treasury, and marries Lucrezia off a third time. Ferrara's court poetically wonders if the gold is realer coated arsenic. Enter the Medici, bankers turned Grand Dukes. While the Borgias play high-stakes roulette in Rome, Florence hums with softer menace. Lorenzo il Magnifico de' Medici is dead, but his legacy of art-soaked power lives on through his children. His eldest son, Piero, bungles diplomacy and flees when the French invade. The Medici vanish for 18 uneasy years, learning exile's taste. Salvation arrives in 1512, when Spanish troops retake Florence and install Lorenzo's second son, Giovanni de' Medici, as Pope Leo Czar Medici wearing St. Peter's ring. From Rome's gilded throne, he plots to secure Florence forever through, you guessed it, marriages. First, he arranges his nephew Lorenzo II de' Medici to wed Madeleine de la Tour d'Auvergne, cousin to the French King Francis I. The dowry includes French support for Medici rule. The wedding feast spills Florentine gold leaf over every pheasant wing. 9 months later, Madeleine dies, delivering a daughter, Catherine de' Medici, future Queen of France and architect of St. Bartholomew's Day. A single marriage concedes centuries of blood. Meanwhile, Leo eyes a different alliance. He offers his relative Giulio de' Medici, future Pope Clement VII, excuse to convene more nuptials after inheriting the tiara in 1523. When the sack of Rome leaves him cornered, Clement arranges the marriage of Catherine to France's future King Henry II, trading a 13-year-old for troops to push Emperor Charles V out of Italy. The wedding gift? 9 million gold écus and a Florentine pope's pardon for French sins. Papal absolutions sometimes come gift-wrapped. A poisoned reputation. Renaissance rumor mills equate both families with poison. Stories claim Lucrezia carried a hollow ring of arsenic. Skeptics note no victim's autopsy. Similarly, Florentine chroniclers whisper that Medici brides mastered Venetian powder to silence inconvenient cousins. Truth dissolves into propaganda, but fear itself can be a potent dowry. In a world where a clever woman can outlive 3 husbands, men think twice about the wine's color, the paper trail of dispensations. Behind every headline marriage sits a Roman office stacked with papal bulls. Consanguinity rules forbid unions within the 4th degree, but exceptions rain down when chanceries jingle with coin. Lucrezia's Ferrara wedding required dispensation. Catherine's French match needed 2. Clerks record phrases like, "for the greater harmony of Christendom," which loosely translates to, "for the balance of swords and silver." A quiet end amidst noise. Lucrezia Borgia finally finds something like peace in Ferrara. She sponsors poets, establishes a hospital for foundlings, exchanges playful letters with Pietro Bembahosa's sonnets, immortalize her as an angel in mortal silk. She dies in childbirth at 39, peacefully by Renaissance standards. Alfonso d'Este orders black banners sewn with the Borgia bull and Este eagle intertwined scandal pardoned by time. Catherine de' Medici's story stretches darker. 3 dead sons on France's throne, wars of religion ripping Paris cobblestones. Yet she navigates regencies with the poise of a practiced dancer, fueling rumors of sorcery. Not magic, she might have said, only math-matching dowries to cannons, lullaby of lilies and bulls. As night deepens, imagine Rome's Tiber reflecting torchlight off the Castel Sant'Angelo, each flame a whisper of vows traded for territory. Hear Florence's Arno lapping at stone keys, carrying away secrets scribbled on perfumed paper. Political marriages can birth empires of bonfires. But in every jeweled procession there is a young woman lifting a veil, wondering if tonight's pact will write her into history as villain, victim, or something more elusive. Survivor. So close your eyes to the faint scent of bitter almonds. Maybe legend, and know the bride bargained more than her hand. She brokered destinies. Let that thought settle like dust on marble, and rest. The next bells to ring will summon another wedding, and another chapter, before dawn. The velvet door that clicks shut. Imagine Ferrara, 1512. Dawn mist curls above the Po River, while Laura Bentivoglio, bride of Duke Alfonso d'Este's cousin, kneels in the ducal chapel, fingers trembling against her rosary. Gossip claims she has grown too willful, meaning she advised her husband on taxation, a sin beyond absolution. Courtiers murmur that Duke Alfonso has a remedy older than arsenic: convent exile. After Mass, Laura is escorted to the Benedictine Abbey of Corpus Domini. The door closes with a soft iron click. Outside, heralds announce she has voluntarily sought the contemplative life. Inside, a Dominican prioress helps her trade velvet sleeves for undyed wool. Thus, a political marriage breathes easier, and a state's honor naps behind lattice screens. Why a convent? Follow the Florins convents, cost less than assassins, and look holier than divorce courts. For a dowries fraction, a patrician husband could pay the angeli custodi fee, a one-time endowment securing the wife's board, lodging, and permanent silence. The ledger might list 25 ducats fresco, repairs in refectory, 40 ducats, organ pipes, in gratitude for Sister Laura's eternal prayers, 14 ducats, locks and bars for the outer grate. City treasurers liked tidy books, popes liked cloistered repentance, only the brides disliked the scheme. Case File 1. The nun of Rimini Isotta dei Atti, second wife to Condottiero Sigismondo Malatesta, enters San Francesco convent in 1462, the very church whose walls her husband decorated with pagan myths. Chroniclers claim she went willingly after Sigismondo tired of diplomacy with her natal family. Inside, she copies psalms until her ink dries. Outside, Malatesta remarries a princess of Urbino and contributes a golden chalice to Isotta's choir penance paid in polished gilt. Case File 2. Caterina Sforza's narrow escape Milan knows a rare counterstory. Caterina Sforza, the Tiger of Forlì, refuses cloister after her first husband, Girolamo Riario, is murdered in 1488. The conspirators demand she retire to a convent so they may govern her children's inheritance. Caterina rides to Fort Sant'Angelo, cannon at her back, and shouts, "I'll enter no cell but the one I put my enemies in." For once, the velvet door stays open, but the attempt proves the norm. Convents are political sieves. The obstinate sometimes slip through. Case File 3. Princess of Naples, widow of silenced Giovanna d'Aragona, daughter of King Ferdinand I of Naples, marries into the Orsini clan of Rome. When a cousin murders her husband for control of Bracciano Castle, Cardinal Alessandro Farnese rescues Giovanna by installing her in the Clarissan convent of San Silvestro. Rescue equals sequester. She spends 30 years embroidering altar cloths while her children grow under others' guardianship. Cardinal Farnese later becomes Pope Paul III. Giovanna remains behind the grate, praised in papal bulls as a model of widowly chastity. A tidy trade, one silent princess for one spotless reputation. Monastic mechanics. Inside most Italian convents, noble escapees entered the choir as dames rather than poverty. Vowed nuns, private cells, servants, personal dowry funds. Their habits might trim at the throat with leftover brocade, yet vows of enclosure banned letters without abbot approval. When family politics required a statement, scribes copied dictated platitudes. I, Sister Maria, pray daily for my husband's success. Authentic or forced. The world outside great bars could only guess. Music thrived in such walls. Many city-states justified exile by pointing to the convent's cultured environment. Organ lessons, polyphonic motets, manuscript illumination. A wife's golden voice, once wasted on court gossip, now lifted to heaven. Yet diaries smuggled in bread loaves tell another tale. Heartbreak echoing in cloister arches, the ache of bells that ring freedom for everyone else. The hidden ledger of power convents also functioned as diplomatic banks. Rival houses might deposit daughters in the same abbey to ensure mutual restraint hostages under veils. Others stashed dowry plates and jewels in convent treasuries, safe from creditors. In Florence, Medici agents tallied cloister deposits the way merchants tallied wool bales. And sometimes, a discarded bride discovered fresh influence within walls. Suor Plautilla Nelli, daughter of a minor Florentine banker packed off to Santa Caterina, becomes the first recognized female painter of the Renaissance, selling altarpieces to patrons who barely remember why she was cloistered. Sunset behind lattice. By the late 1500s, Council of Trent reforms tightened cloister rules, curbing noble loopholes, yet the practice lingers. Better a veiled scandal than a public trial. The last famous case comes in 1697, when Modena's Duke forces Maria Farnese into a Carmelite cell after rumours of an affair. Witnesses recall her pale hand clutching the gate bars as the lock turned. History's attention was elsewhere by then. Louis XIV's wars, Newton's gravity, but the convent door still clicked shut on inconvenient brides. Sleep among the bells. Hear the soft clapper of a convent bell drifting through night air. Somewhere in those shadowed cloisters, a former duchess kneels at Compline, whispering prayers in Latin, while counting how many popes have reigned since she last saw the sunrise over city rooftops. Draw your blanket closer. Feel the hush of candle smoke curling like forgotten names. Political marriages sought to bind kingdoms. When the knot frayed, a cloister cell waited, gentle as stone, firm as fate. Let that echo lull you. The velvet door has closed, the lattice is secure, and the bride is silenced, yet still breathing in manuscript Marginsham Ave Maria until dawn. It is January 1533, and Copenhagen tastes of salt and gunpowder. The old king, Christian II, has fallen. Civil war grevens fade, the count's war claws across Denmark. Amid the smoke, a slender 16-year-old duchess reads the latest proposal spread across oak boards in the council chamber. Her name is Christina of Denmark, niece to Emperor Charles V, and the letter is from King Henry VIII of England. Henry wants a third wife, someone fertile, politically useful, not yet condemned by Rome. Christina, widowed at 13 when her first husband, Francesco II, Sforza of Milan, died of tuberculosis, is a tempting prospect. Habsburg blood, Scandinavian poise, alliances from Baltic to Tyrrhenian. Imperial advisors suggest a polite yes, but Christina has read the English news. Catherine of Aragon discarded after 20 years. Anne Boleyn elevated, then eyed with suspicion. Rumours of headsmen's axes glinting behind palace doors. She smooths the parchment and replies with words that freeze the room colder than the Øresund Strait in February. If I had two heads, one should be at the King of England's disposal. No silk, no Latin flourish, just ice and caution. Diplomats shuffle, cough, commit the phrase to memory. For once, a political bride declines the bargain. A childhood of chess moves, Christina's resistance is forged from a childhood spent as living treaty. At 5, she is sent to the Netherlands court of her aunt, Regent Margaret of Austria, where tutors drill her in Greek, statecraft, and the art of weighing smiles. At 11, she is married by proxy to Sforza, the aging Duke of Milan, a union meant to anchor Habsburg power in northern Italy. She meets the groom in person 2 years later, learns to speak Italian with a lilting Danish cadence, and begins to plan terrace gardens on the Palazzo Ducale until Phsis plucks the Duke away. Widowed, she returns to Brussels, now fluent in realpolitik and funeral protocol. By 16, she is 5'10", high cheekboned, and steel-cored beneath velvet. When envoys court her, she listens with downcast lashes but an accountant's mind, tallying how many brides came before her and how many gravestones followed. The English interlude Henry VIII's suit is not her first refusal, merely the most dramatic. Imperial Chancellor Mercurino Gattinara counsels compliance England would counterbalance France. Christina reminds him England's queens are cul-de-sacs. She proposes instead to let Henry stew, while Habsburg forces secure Milan by arms, not matrimony. Emperor Charles, amused, allows her word to stand. Henry receives the chilling quip and seethes. His portraitists later paint Christina anyway, citing future possibilities. The portrait survives in the National Gallery, London, her face serene, as if daring the canvas to blink first. A duke in wartime refusal, however, does not grant retirement. Charles arranges a second match. Francis, Duke of Lorraine, 22, earnest, and badly outflanked by French ambitions. Christina agrees Lorraine lies between imperial and French spheres, a shield wall in need of reinforcement. Their 1,540 wedding in Brussels is snow-soft and understated. No axe-edge tension, only the hum of political gears. She rides east to Nancy, where river mists veil castle turrets. There, she settles into governance, reviewing tax ledgers, sponsoring canal improvements, arranging militia drills. The court whispers she inherited her Aunt Margaret's brisk handwriting and her Uncle Charles's talent for reading a battlefield before horses even saddle. 4 years later, Francis dies after leading troops against the French. At Metz, exhaustion, infection, rumour of poison. Christina, 27, is widow again, guardian to 2 infants, and suddenly Duchess Regent of Lorraine and Bar. France eyes the duchy like a hawk. Charles V is embattled on too many fronts. Christina tightens gate chains, sends envoys to the Holy Roman Diet, and personally inspects gun emplacements on the citadel walls. Chroniclers note she rides astride in a velvet-lined habit, scarlet gloves bright against morning frost. War, captivity, and escape. Henry II of France invades Lorraine, capturing Metz, Toul, Verdun. Christina dispatches her children to safety, then stays to negotiate. French troops escort her politely to a safe residence in Brussels, effectively house arrest. She spends 3 years under veiled guard, corresponding with both Emperor and French King, playing them like mismatched chess pieces. When Charles abdicates in 1555, Christina slips south to Italy under guise of visiting relatives, then quietly returns to Lorraine, her presence rallying nobles who'd wavered in her absence. It is said she kept in her travel satchel a tiny watercolour of her teenage self, the portrait Henry VIII once sought, perhaps as reminder that a queen who dodged one guillotine may yet dodge others. Final years in exile's garden, politics grind on. In 1560, Philip the O. Charles's son appoints Christina governor of the Duchy of Milan, but papal politics block installation. She inherits Montferrat, argues land titles before German courts, and finally retires to Tortona in Piedmont, where she tends citrus groves and sponsors Jesuit colleges. She dies in December 1590, aged 73, having survived 3 proposals, 2 husbands, 2 wars, and 1 English king with a taste for execution. Her epitaph, carved in Latin, omits crowns and conflict. It calls her simply Christina, most prudent. No stone mentions that she once told a monarch his marriage bed required spare heads. Yet diplomats repeat the tale in smoky inns along North Sea trade routes, raising ale to the Duchess who preferred her single neck intact. Pull your blanket close. Feel the hush of falling snow on Danish pines, the faint click of a quill, as a 16-year-old writes. Know in letters bold enough to cross an empire, political marriage can command armies, but sometimes a single refusal redraws the map. Let that quiet courage rock you towards sleep, where 2-headed nightmares lose their teeth, and winter sky unfolds like a safe, white page. In 1353, on a windswept evening near Copenhagen, midwives huddle around a cedar cradle. They whisper that the newborn princess, Margrethe, is too small, too quiet. Her father, King Valdemar IV of Denmark, shrugs. Quiet timber still builds a strong hull. By 7, she reads treaties rather than psalters. By 10, she can point on a map to every Norwegian fjord where herrings flash like silver coins. At that same age, she is betrothed to Håkon VI of Norway and Swedena, boy king of 20. The wedding takes place inside Copenhagen's limestone castle. Outside, Baltic gulls shriek over wind, tossed water. Chroniclers note Margrethe's bridal cloak drags the ground like a red river. They do not note the steel in her smile. Queen consort, Silent Storm Norway, greets the young queen with pine-pitch torches and mountains, the colour of iron. Court ladies mutter about her Danish manners. She listens, adjusts, learns to speak their lilting tongue while practicing currency conversions in her head. Håkon, earnest but distracted by Swedish rebellions, leaves governance to seasoned jarls. Margrethe studies their ledgers at night, catching tiny embezzlements the way snow catches footprints. When their only son Olaf is born in 1370, Denmark erupts in church bells and air linking 2 crowns. 6 years later, King Valdemar dies. Tiny Olaf inherits Denmark while already heir to Norway. Håkon dies 4 years after that, leaving 11-year-old Olaf king of 2 kingdoms and Margrethe, the regent guardian of the realm at 28. Those Danish midwives didn't foresee this. The quiet girl now steers half of Scandinavia. The union forged in grief Olaf's reign ends abruptly. Plague, or sudden illness at 15. Margaret buries her only child beneath Roskilde Cathedral's echoing vault, then rides north in a storm of black furs. Danish nobles assume grief will sideline her. Norwegian jarls assume she will retreat to a convent like so many unwanted queens. Instead, she convenes assemblies in both kingdoms, wins over bishops with promises of ecclesiastical autonomy, and, within months, is elected all-powerful lady and mistress of Denmark and Norway. Sweden, meanwhile, is ruled by unpopular German-born King Albert of Mecklenburg. Swedish nobles, weary of foreign taxes, secretly invite Margrethe to intervene. She marches an army across frozen Öresund, defeats Albert at the Battle of Falköping in 1389, and captures him in a cart, so cramped his crown bangs the roof with each jolt an image Swedish peasants chuckle over for years. Suddenly, Margaret holds all three northern thrones, a bride repurposed. To legitimize her control and secure succession, Margrethe selects her grandnephew, Eric of Pomerania, 10 years old, bright-eyed, malleable. She adopts him legally, arranges his betrothal to Philippa of England to keep southern powers distracted, and announces an assembly at Kalmar Castle in 1397. There, under patriarchal arches of spruce beams, clergy and nobles from Denmark, Norway, and Sweden swear oaths on silver-bound Bibles. One monarch, one foreign policy, but each land keeps its own laws. The Kalmar Union is born, its seal showing 3 crowns welded together. Margaret herself never remarries. Asked why, she tells a confessor, "One husband gave me Norway, one son gave me Denmark. Sweden I won myself. What more can wedlock bring?" The monk writes humility exemplary in his margin. Scholars later underline the irony. Philippa's snow-bright vigil fast forward to 1406. Eric, now 15, weds Philippa of England, 13. Raised amid London pageantry, Philippa steps onto Scandinavian soil in ermine-lined boots, vowing to learn all 3 court languages. Margaret coaches her, "Rule with your ears first." Philippa listens so well that when Eric sails to campaign against the Holstein counts, she governs for 6 winters, convening diets, arbitrating peasant tax appeals, and personally supervising Stockholm's harbour defences against the Hanseatic League. She is 20. Legend says she stands atop the castle wall during a Hanseatic raid in 1428, long braids whipping beneath a steel cap, directing cannon fire that drives merchants' galleys back into the dark Baltic. Townswomen later gift her a cloak sewn with tiny brass keys each key, a symbol of city gates she kept shut against invaders. Cracks in the ice. Yet unions, like ice, crack under spring thaws. After Margaret's death in 1412, fleet fever caught while inspecting troops. Eric grows willful. He raises tolls on Öresund shipping, angers Hanseatic traders, and favours Danish nobles over Swedish. Philippa dies in childbirth at 35. The Union loses its English bridge. Swedish miners revolt, chanting Margrethe's name as they slam pickaxes against tax collectors' shields. By 1448, Denmark will elect a new king. Sweden will swing toward independence, and Norway will cling to whichever crown seems least neglectful. The Kalmar Union never fully dissolves, but fractures like flow, ice drifting, fusing in crises, drifting again. A northern lullaby, still, for half a century, one woman's marriage contract and another's widow's steely regency kept 3 cold kingdoms under one silken banner. That banner still hangs in Uppsala's cathedral treasury. Blue field, 3 golden crowns, edges frayed like seaweed. Pilgrims trace its threads, whispering of Margaret's quiet ferocity and Philippa's cannon-lit vigil. Anna Komnene is born in 1083 within the purple-draped porphyra chamber of Constantinople's imperial palace. To be porphyrogenitor means divinity by architecture. Walls inlaid with porphyry, midwives sworn to secrecy, scripture intoned over a newborn's first breath. Her father is Emperor Alexios I, Komnenos battle-hardened, adored for repelling Norman and Pecheneg raids. Her mother, Empress Irene Ducana, descends from scholars and art patrons. From her cradle, Anna hears quills instead of rattles, theologians debating logos, physicians reciting Galen, astronomers charting Venus's haze. By 7 she copies Homeric verse. By 10 she challenges tutors on Aristotle's categories. Courtiers look at the raven-haired child and whisper, "If only she were a son." Betrothed to a historian in armor, courtiers predict she will marry greatness. Alexios selects Nikephoros Bryennios, scholar general, 15 years her senior, steady as a marble column. He's fought beside the emperor, yet pens treatises on tactics during campfire vigils. Anna approves. She would rather debate causality with her husband than embroider suns on altar cloths. Wedding rites swirl under Hagia Sophia's colossal dome-gold mosaics flicker, censers swing, and choirs drizzle Kyrie Ellison like liquid light. The scroll of betrothal includes fine print. Nikephoros receives the title Caesar, a rung below the throne. Everyone notes the implication. Anna might someday become empress in her own right, the first ruling woman since Irene of Athens 2 centuries prior. A crown promised, a brother born. But prophecy stumbles in 1087 when John, their baby brother, arrives, purple-born like Anna, but male. Byzantine succession custom favors the eldest son. Empress Irene lobbies for Anna. Emperor Alexios wavers between affection and political gravity. The court splits. Ducaeans, Anna's maternal kin, versus Comnenians, John's backers. The tension tastes of cloves and steel. Anna studies medicine under famous Dr. Michael Sellos, perhaps hoping practical genius will override the chromosomal tally sheet. Nikephoros leads campaigns, returns with siege dust on his boots, and reads to her from Thucydides by lamplight. Their marriage is parchment and chainmail entwined, each line footnoted in affection. The great old emperor sleeps. By 1118, Alexios's breath rattles. Fever clouds his war-scarred lungs. On his deathbed, he states publicly that John is heir, but privately places his imperial ring beside Anna's inkstone, murmuring, "Guard the legacy." Anna interprets this as mandate. John interprets it as mourning confusion. At dawn, Alexios is gone, and power runs through palace corridors like spilled oil seeking flame. The failed coup in candle smoke. Anna, her mother Irene, and several uncles move swiftly. They persuade high courtiers that John's youth needs a guiding hand. They secure the imperial treasury, muster Varangian guards loyal to Irene. But John, lean and hawk-eyed at 31, outmaneuvers them. He strides into the throne hall before sunrise, snatches the crown from under the guards' noses, and stages a lightning coronation witnessed by the palace clergy. By noon, the horns of proclamation echo across Constantinople's 7 hills. John II. Komnenos reigns. That night, Anna's conspirators gather by candlelight. Nikephoros pauses at the threshold, then refuses. He loves his wife, but not treason. Without his military gravitas, the coup collapses like a wilted scroll. John banishes no one publicly. He pardons his sister to honor their father's dying wish. But he removes Anna's access to state archives, freezes part of her dowry lands, and orders her to reside in the Mangana Palace's women's quarter for contemplation. Pen sharp as any pike, some call it exile. Anna calls it opportunity. In marble halls overlooking the Bosphorus, she converts a former reception room into a scriptorium. Shelves groan with chronicles, campaign diaries, tax ledgers. Candle after candle gutters out as she writes the Alexiada's 17-book history of her father's reign, laced with medical observations, philosophical asides, and subtle rebukes of her brother's policies. Nikephoros, ever loyal yet prudent, contributes notes from his own war memoirs. Their intellectual partnership outshines any diadem. She paints herself as astute field nurse, Alexios as lion-hearted emperor, Irene as savvy strategist. Critics later quip, she gilds Comnenian achievements, but none dispute her prose's thunder. She coins phrases like "a storm in bronze" to describe Norman charge, and labels Crusader princes wild lions panting for our vineyards. Most daring. The text never calls John incompetent, yet its silence on his victories is deafening. Ink becomes her subtle rebellion. Widowhood and quiet twilight Nikephoros dies in 1137 plague on a Balkan campaign. Anna, now 54, dons black wool and sharper wit. She edits and polishes Alexiad another decade, weaving medical case studies with digressions on fate. She funds a hospital wing, lecturing novices on wound sutures, quoting Galen mid-stitch. When visiting scholars seek audience, she debates them from behind a silk curtain. Proper modesty for a royal widow, improper brilliance for a cloistered woman. She passes in 1153, aged 70, manuscript beside her like a drawn sword laid to rest. The Alexiad survives fire, sack, Ottoman conquest, and Victorian mistranslations to become the clearest Byzantium we possess, its corridors echoing with a daughter's determined footsteps. Jerusalem in 1113 shimmers like a mirage of faith and fear. The First Crusade may have planted a Latin kingdom, but it also birthed an orphan. Melisende, daughter of King Baldwin II and the Armenian noblewoman Morphia. Raised amid psalms and spear drills, Melisende learns early that a queen beyond the Mediterranean must pray with one eye open. When she turns 22, Baldwin selects her husband, Fulk of Anjou, veteran of Norman wars, and crucially rich in ships. The marriage contract drips with obligations. Fulk will defend Jerusalem. Melisende will supply legitimacy. They wed inside the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Pilgrims sob, trumpets blare, and outside the knight's polished cross, emblazoned shields already spotted with desert rust. 2 crowns, 1 coronation. A decade later, Baldwin grows sick in Antioch. He commands that Melisende and Fulk be crowned co-monarchs while he lives, ensuring a seamless handoff. In 1131 they sit side by side beneath the sepulchre's flickering lamps, twin crowns catching oil lamp flare. But co-rule proves messy. Fulk trusts his Angevin retainers and sidelines native nobles loyal to Melisende. Rumour claims he even seizes her treasury keys. The queen responds with parchment and patience. She builds alliances among Jerusalem's barons Manasses of Hirges, the Ibelins, the Patriarch. By 1134 they corner Fulk politically. A contemporary chronicle records that he dared not oppose her. An uneasy truce forms. Fulk keeps the army, Melisende keeps the chancery. For 8 more years, the kingdom balances on that marital knife. Then a hunting accident near Acre leaves Fulk dead horse spooked, skull broken. Melisende becomes sole ruler, her young son Baldwin III still a minor. Steely in widow's black, she reweaves policy, fortifies Gaza, endows Bethany Convent, sponsors illustrated manuscripts that fuse Frankish styles with Coptic gold leaf. Arab chroniclers call her Al-Malika al-Malikiya, the royal queen, noting her justice impressed even Muslim merchants. The son who wanted his half. But Baldwin III grows restless, coaxed by hawk-feathered courtiers. Why should he play prince when his mother wields the scepter? In 1152, disputes ignite. Council meetings resound with clashing maps. Melisende favours consolidation. Baldwin eyes Edessa's lost borders. They agree, under patriarch mediation, to split the kingdom. She keeps Judea and Samaria. He claims Galilee and the coast. Yet division weakens Jerusalem at the worst hour. Zengi's successors test frontier castles, and Egypt's viziers eye Gaza's caravan taxes. 2 years later, Baldwin reunites the crown, this time as senior king. Yet he retains his mother as most trusted advisor until her death in 1161. In a realm measured by sieges, Melisende manages governance for 30 years, a feat no Western queen can match this century. Her coins, bearing a cross over the dome of the rock outline, circulate from Acre to Aleppo long after she is dust. Enter Sibylla, fast forward a generation. Baldwin III's nephew, Baldwin IV, inherits at 13 but soon shows signs of leprosy. Knowing his time is short, the leper king must secure succession through his half-sister Sibylla. At 16, Sibylla has auburn hair, an easy laugh, and a kingdom balanced on her dowry. Advisors first betroth her to William of Montferrat, who dies of fever within months, leaving a posthumous son. Next candidate, Guy of Lusignan, a Poitevin knight whose ambition outpaces his judgment. Baldwin hesitates, then consents. The marriage proceeds in 1180, partly to block an anti-royal faction from marrying her elsewhere. Widow to Queen overnight, Baldwin IV's leprosy shatters his health. He names his young nephew, Sibylla's son, as heir with Raymond of Tripoli as regent, hoping to sideline Guy, but the child king dies within a year. Jerusalem's nobility fractures. Some prefer Sibylla's half-sister Isabella. Others, wary of civil war, accept Sibylla on one condition: she must annul Guy. Sibylla nods, removes her crown, then rewinds the deal. She will indeed discard Guy, but reserves the right to choose her next husband. The barons, cornered, agree. She walks into the audience chamber, lifts the crown, and places it first on her own head, then dramatically on Guy's. Deal circumvented. The chronicler Ernol writes, "The men were confounded, but could not contradict the queen. Catastrophe at Hattin politics meets battlefield at Hattin, 1187. Guy leads Jerusalem's army into Galilee's parched hills, lured by Saladin's feigned retreat. The Crusader force exhausts its water stores, is encircled, and breaks. Saladin captures Guy and most of the nobility. Only scattered knights stagger back to Jerusalem with word of disaster. Sibylla organizes the city's defense, supervising wall repairs, rationing cisterns, sending relics in barefoot procession. Yet on the 2nd of October, Jerusalem capitulates. Saladin grants safe conduct. Sibylla and her daughters, veiled, march to Tyre. Love in exile, death in dust. Released in a prisoner swap, Guy seeks to reclaim the crown, leading the Third Crusade's western troops to besiege Acre. Sibylla follows, sharing rough tents and battlefield dust. But on a humid summer day in 1190, plague sweeps the Crusader camp. Sibylla and her 2 young daughters die within weeks. Guy's claim evaporates. Rival factions rally behind Isabella. Crusader singers later weave ballads contrasting Melisendre's steel with Sibylla's rose-soft loyal Taitu queens, shaped by the same scorching land, meeting fates as different as fortress and flower. It is February 1744, and the Neva River lies under armour-thick ice. Into St. Petersburg's Winter Palace steps a 16-year-old minor German princess, Sophie Friederike, Auguste of Anhalt, Zerbst. She has survived a carriage roll in Prussian snow, rehearsed Orthodox catechism by candlelight, and now bows to Empress Elizabeth Petrovna gold brocade, powdered wig, temper like a blizzard. Elizabeth needs a bride for her nephew and heir, Grand Duke Peter. Sophie needs an empire to outrank her creditors. The Empress approves. The girl converts, emerging from the icy baptismal font as Catherine Alexeyevna, Grand Duchess of all the Russias. Frederick the Great smirks. He just placed a Prussian pawn on the Romanov chessboard. A wedding of wax. Masks. The marriage ceremony in August 1745 glitters with Baltic amber and draughty grandeur. Court choristers chant Greek liturgy, while courtiers gossip in French. Peter, 17, already favours toy soldiers over conversation. He arrives in a uniform 3 sizes too large, cheeks flushed with measles scars. Catherine, in silver cloth stitched with double-headed eagles, notices he smells of beer and adolescent panic. After the feast, servants light 1,000 beeswax candles in the bridal chamber. Catherine will later write more irony than bitterness that Peter spent half the night marching tin grenadiers across the coverlet, making artillery noises. Political alliance consummated? Hardly. But the Empress waves away rumours. Heirs will come. Patience is a Russian virtue. Learning by candle, plotting by dawn, waiting for heirs, Catherine reads. She devours Plutarch, Montesquieu, Voltaire smuggled beneath embroidery hoops. She practices Russian secretly at dawn because Peter mocks the language of savages. She rides with hussars, learns to fence, studies the Orthodox liturgy until she can correct her confessor's Greek declensions. Peter laughs at none of this. He idolizes Frederick of Prussia. Russia's rival picks fights with stable boys and stages mock hangings of palace pets. The court nicknames him the Holstein Fool. Catherine adds observations to a mental dossier titled Future Leverage. An heir and an emperor, unsuitable. After 9 barren years, Catherine bears a son, Paul, in 1754. Peter claims paternity publicly, scoffs privately. Court whispers range from a dashingly mustached cavalry officer to Sergei Saltykov, Catherine's gallant confidant. Elizabeth confiscates the infant Romanov tradition, and Catherine feeds her ambition on study and salons. 1756. The 7 Years' War erupts. Russia fights Prussia, meaning Peter hero worships the enemy. Catherine wins hearts by inspecting field hospitals, donating furs to soldiers' widows, and flirting in Idian with the Guards' regiments. Muskets may decide battles, but palace coups prefer uniforms that adore their prospective Tsaritsa. Empress dies. Dice roll Christmas Eve 1761. Empress Elizabeth dies after a stroke. Peter III ascends in waxen splendor, declaring an immediate armistice with Prussia. Officers who bled at Kunersdorf grit their teeth. Church prelates mutter at his Lutheran leanings. Within 6 months he alienates nobles, serfs freed without compensation, clergy, monastery lands seized, and guards. Prussian drills enforced, Russian icons removed from barracks. Catherine waits, serene, mapping loyalties. She secures the Orlov brothers Grigory, Alexei, battle-hard captains adored by the Guards, and promises legal reforms, honours, maybe her heart. She visits barracks at dawn, shares black bread, speaks unaccented Russian that startles veterans. The White Night coup, the 28th of June. Old style, the 9th of July. 1762. Dawn never fully darkens in a St. Petersburg white night. Catherine slips out of Peterhof Palace in a plain carriage, reaches the Izmailovsky regiment, and stands on a drum to address soldiers. Brothers, will you help me save Mother Russia from ruin? Bayonets thump the air, oath sworn. The guards march to the Winter Palace, chanting, Catherine, Little Mother, church bells toll coup. Peter, at Oranienbaum, panics. He flees, signs an abdication after one rum-infused plea for safe passage to Holstein. 8 days later, he is dead in custody. Officially, hemorrhoidal colic. Unofficially, a strangulation scuffle supervised by Alexei Orlov. Catherine writes no orders, but sheds no tears. Coronation, in Baroque thunder, September 1762. Catherine, 33, enters the Dormition Cathedral in Moscow. Monks lower Monomaque's cap onto her dark coiffure. Trumpets shriek. Cannon roar across the Kremlin walls. The new empress titles herself Catherine II, pledging to prosper the fatherland through reason. Foreign ambassadors jot in disbelief. A minor German princess now rules from the Baltic to Kamchatka. Marriage afterlife. Lovers and laws. Catherine never remarries. She cultivates a favourite system. Grigory Orlov, the coup hero. Suave Prince Potemkin. A score of handsome aides. Decamp. Meanwhile, she rewrites Russia. Nakaz legal code. Chartered towns. Smallpox vaccinations. Sculpture academies. The vast annexation of Crimea and partitions of Poland. European philosophies. Salute La Semiramis du Nord. Voltaire addresses her Star of the North in letters laced with flattery and Enlightenment envy. Paul, the maybe-not Peter son, grows moody under maternal sidelining. But Catherine outlives Peter by 34 years, steering Russia onto the world stage with quills, wars, and glittering pragmatism. Candle at the birch window. She dies in November 1796 after a stroke, found in her study beside plans for a Greek revival state and new schools for girls. Nobles file past the coffin, whispering that even death could not erase the coup's audacity. Some recall Peter's tin soldiers. Others query whether Russia would have survived his reign. History, like Catherine, keeps its counsel.